Following the Korean War, the peninsula was divided into two states, with the north under an authoritarian system inspired by Stalin's command economy and governed by the Kim dynasty, effectively functioning as an absolute monarchy. In the south, an American-backed authoritarian capitalist state persisted from 1948 to 1960, followed by a brief democratic period under the Second Republic. The country then transitioned into another dictatorship from 1963 to 1988. Since 1988, South Korea has embraced hyper-capitalism, although it is a liberal democracy. However, its level of democracy falls slightly short of the United States, even though the United States itself does not rank number one in terms of freedom and democracy. Korea's current state is heavily influenced by historical factors such as the Cold War and imperialism. Japan's brutal rule over Korea for 35 years, which included the exploitation of comfort women, had profound impacts on the country. Additionally, prior to Japan's rule, Korea experienced periods of Chinese influence and experienced brief periods of independent rule under local dynasties. Following World War II, Korea was briefly unified under a democratic socialist government known as the People's Republic of Korea, which lasted from 945 to 946. This democratic socialist government was distinct from North Korea, although they shared a similar name. However, during the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union occupied the north and south of the Korean peninsula, even though there may not have been a pressing need to do so, as the Cold War was, in essence, more about imperialist superpowers competing for global dominance rather than solely about communism versus capitalism. It is worth noting that contrary to some claims made by hardline Stalinists online, the People's Republic of Korea did not continue into what is now North Korea. In reality, the North Korean government dismantled the workers' councils and bottom-up system of the People's Republic of Korea, replacing it with a more centralized and authoritarian top-down approach, often characterized as a one-party rule. Quoting from the Wikipedia article on the People's Republic of Korea 1925 to 1946 in December 1945 during the Moscow Conference. In this meeting, the Soviet Union agreed to a US proposal for a trusteeship over Korea spanning up to 5 years, with the eventual goal of achieving independence for the Korean people. Cho Man-sik, a prominent Korean leader, strongly opposed this proposal at a public gathering on January 4, 1946. However, following his opposition, he mysteriously disappeared and was placed under house arrest. Since 1962, North Korea has pursued nuclear development. It presently possesses nuclear weapons, making it plausible to anticipate that South Korea may also acquire similar capabilities for self-defense. However, in the contemporary era, it is safe to assert that both North and South Korea face the challenges of a dystopian existence due to the imperialist influence of the USSR and the US during the Cold War. While North Korea is widely recognized as the least desirable place to live due to its totalitarian state and food insecurity, South Korea, despite being a democracy, is also facing challenges of its own. The hyper-capitalist nature of the nation has led to economic disparities and issues that contribute to its classification as a dystopia, albeit of an economic nature rather than a political one. It's important to note that North Korea, officially known as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, is not genuinely a socialist or communist nation. Labels and self-identifications can be misleading, and a closer examination of the country's actions and governance reveals a stark contrast to these ideologies. If you're basing your belief of North Korea as a communist or socialist country solely on its official designation, the article "Communism in Korea" on Wikipedia offers a crucial clarification. In 2009, significant changes occurred in North Korea's approach to communism. The government removed references to communism from the national constitution. Over the following years, further changes were noted, such as the removal of portraits of Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin and the absence of communist references in official documents. However, in 2021, the Workers' Party reaffirmed its commitment to communism. North Korea's political identity is complicated beyond its official stance on communism. Its Juche ideology, rooted in Korean nationalism, diverges from Marxist principles and emphasizes self-reliance rather than international cooperation. This deviation highlights the disconnect between the government's rhetoric and the actual implementation of socialist and Marxist ideologies. North Korea's characterization as a dystopia becomes more apparent when delving into the intricacies of its political landscape and the stark contrast between its stated beliefs and actual practices. The portrayal of North Korea as a dystopian nation is more evident when examining the reality on the ground. According to a report by Human Rights Watch titled "North Korea, Escapees Describe COVID-Linked Repression," the accounts of North Korean defectors align with the findings of the Human Rights Watch report released in March 2024 titled "A Sense of Terror Stronger Than a Bullet: The Closing of North Korea 2018-2023. The report indicates that the North Korean government imposed excessive and unnecessary measures during the COVID-19 pandemic, exacerbating the already repressive nature of the country. Additionally, the government's strict restrictions on leaving North Korea under the pretext of defending against the virus, including a standing order to shoot anyone crossing the northern border without approval. Even before the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, North Korea had already established itself as one of the world's most repressive and isolated nations, characterized by strict controls over information, movement, and daily life. Decades of government policies prioritizing militarization and weapons programs over social welfare have left the people of North Korea, which is also one of the world's poorest countries, struggling with severe food insecurity and widespread chronic malnutrition. A fisherman from a remote area revealed that the government's strict measures related to COVID-19 restricted his access to the sea, prompting him to consider escape. He mentioned that a few people had previously ventured out to fish, but one individual was captured by the authorities. The fisherman shared that the authorities displayed a paper with the word traitor on it near the captured individual's home, accompanied by a warning not to approach. The fisherman explained that the individual was subsequently sent to a long-term hard labor prison camp, Gyeohwaso, known as a Reform Through Labor Center. The individuals featured in the report highlighted an intensification of repression, fear, and ideological control in North Korea. Several interviewees mentioned an augmentation in public executions following the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. Kim Il-hyuk, a rice trader from South Hwanghae province who departed North Korea in May 2023, stated that he observed no executions between 2012 and 2019. However, a notable change occurred in 2020, with Kim Il-hyuk reporting that he witnessed executions every 2 months. In another article published by Human Rights Watch, titled North Korea, Persistent Repression, Hunger, and Inequality in the 2026 World Report, Human Rights Watch analyzed the human rights situation in over 100 countries worldwide. In the preface to the report, Philip Alston, Permanent Director of Human Rights Watch, emphasized the importance of addressing the wave of authoritarianism that has gained ground in recent years. He called upon democratic nations and civil society to forge strategic alliances to safeguard fundamental freedoms in a context where the human rights system faces unprecedented challenges, citing the Trump administration as one example of the threats to human rights. North Korea's official trade volumes have diminished since the COVID-19 pandemic onset, while regulation of market activities has been intensified. Furthermore, the food shortage crisis has persisted and intensified due to rising prices, forcing residents to reduce their dietary intake as the authorities prioritize military development. The UNHCR has reported that North Korea's regime, under Kim Jong-un's leadership, has maintained strict control over its population through escalated surveillance, forced labor, and harsh punishments. In December 2024, the United Nations General Assembly and Human Rights Council issued a resolution condemning North Korea's human rights record. China forcibly repatriated a substantial number of North Koreans in 2025, with at least 1,076 cases reported since 2020. Such actions are illegal, and repatriated individuals face significant risks of torture, forced labor, sexual violence, unjustified detention, and even executions. In addition, reductions in support from the US government for independent media and the scaling back of South Korean broadcasting have left fewer channels available for sending unfiltered information to North Korea, resulting in further isolation and a deepening information censorship. Human Rights Watch emphasized that the North Korean government should repeal the order for unconditional gun use at the border, ensure sufficient access to food and adequate medical services for its citizens, create employment opportunities, and allow independent monitoring activities, including inspections by the United Nations Human Rights Organization. While the brutality of North Korea is well known, less attention is given to the fact that South Korea's problems, such as the low birth rate, are exacerbated by capitalist policies that prioritize corporate profit over social welfare. Both North and South Korea are not true socialist states. A reunification under a government modeled after the People's Republic of Korea, with worker councils guiding the nation, could address the core issues by placing human well-being above profit maximization. Many discussions about Korea's challenges overlook the role of capitalism in contributing to the issues at hand. It's crucial to acknowledge how capitalist systems exacerbate societal problems by prioritizing profit over people's welfare. According to an article in Asia Daily titled "Two-thirds of South Korean workers face after-hours contact as right to disconnect laws stall." According to the report, nearly two-thirds of South Korean workers experienced work-related contact outside of office hours over the previous year. Alarmingly, 31% of workers were contacted after 10 p.m. A staggering 81% of employees support legal measures to restrict after-hours work contact, but the bills introduced into 20s have repeatedly failed. Research also demonstrates a link between after-hours device use and increased rates of headaches, eye strain, and potential health risks. Workers exposed to after-hours communication exhibit a 55% higher risk than those not contacted at all. South Korea ranks last globally in terms of remote work flexibility, with an average of only 0.5 days per week of remote work compared to 1.9 days in Canada. Despite the adoption of artificial intelligence AI technology that reduces work hours by estimated 3, after-hours work contact remains on the rise, further exacerbating sleep deprivation and contributing to a record low birth rate. The underlying root cause lies in the system of capitalism, which prioritizes profit over worker well-being. In South Korea, long working hours and rigid work culture are symptoms of a larger issue: the dominance of corporations and their focus on maximizing profit above all else. This leads to the erosion of workers' rights, the normalization of overwork, and a culture of burnout. The low birth rate can also be linked to the economic instability and pressures on workers brought about by the existing economic system. Addressing these issues requires a fundamental re-evaluation of the balance between profit and people. The article quoted by The Guardian titled, "I feel completely drained. Young professionals swamped by infinite workdays." It is 10:00 p.m. in Seoul, South Korea, and Hyunjin Lee, a recent college graduate working in the IT industry, is still at a mandatory team dinner. Amid laughter, Lee confesses, "I end up working late almost every night." The weight of the workload leaves her feeling depleted, explaining, "By the end of the day, I feel completely drained, as if I've exhausted all of my energy. Even on weekdays after work, Lee finds it difficult to do anything else due to her exhaustion." Hyunjin Lee's average workday begins at 9:30 a.m. and often extends until 10 p.m. or even midnight. Within a single workday, she receives an overwhelming 200 messages, often related to meetings and collaboration. With her daytime filled with various commitments and responsibilities, evenings are the only opportunity she has to catch up on individual tasks, contributing to her feeling of burnout and exhaustion. Indeed, the experiences described by Hyunjin Lee are not unique. According to a report by Microsoft's 2025 Work Trend Index, the concept of infinite workdays has become increasingly common. These workdays start before sunrise, extend late into the night, and are frequently interrupted by incessant notifications, averaging approximately one every 2 minutes. This constant barrage of distractions and the expectation of endless availability contribute to the sense of exhaustion and burnout that workers like Lee experience. Many professionals are grappling with this demanding work landscape. Even when the option to work from home is available, employees often feel pressure not to take advantage of it. As Hyunjin Lee shared, "If I pushed myself too hard one day, I try to leave work early the next day to rest, but there's an unspoken pressure not to work from home even if it's allowed." She elaborates on this sentiment, explaining, "I do it anyway because I simply have so much work, and commuting feels like a waste of time when I'm already exhausted." The challenges faced by the younger generation extend beyond burnout and exhaustion. Sal, age 24, expressed concern over the outdated working structure still in place. Despite high debt accumulated during university, the rewards of hard work seem elusive, with little payoff compared to previous generations. Frustration mounts as job hopping has become a common coping mechanism for addressing burnout or dissatisfaction with lack of opportunities. As Sal succinctly put it, "We're graduating with high debt, slogging through a job that burns us out, and it doesn't even seem to be paying off our debt." Sal's first year in his current role took a toll on his mental health, leading him to seek therapy due to an unmanageable workload and a constant feeling of anxiety. Despite being in a somewhat favorable position compared to his peers, he was diagnosed with a general anxiety disorder. In South Korea, known for its long working hours, younger generations are challenging the status quo. There's a shift in priorities towards free time, flexible work environments, and personal freedom. The notion that overtime is a positive indicator of time management has evolved, with the younger population questioning the value of working long hours. These sentiments are echoed by Lee, who states, "Younger professionals really value their leisure time work and prioritize flexible work environments and personal freedom." Contrary to previous preconceptions, younger generations believe that working overtime can reflect poor time management rather than being seen as productive. Some individuals find themselves working long hours due to the nature of their jobs, while others tolerate it in hopes of achieving better work-life balance in the future. Jane, who wished to remain anonymous, revealed that she is juggling 2 full-time jobs with the goal of leaving the corporate world by the time she turns 30 in 4 years. Residing in Toronto, she successfully manages a 9 a.m. to 5 marketing manager role with a 5:00 p.m. to 11:00 p.m. remote call service representative job. Despite the demanding schedule, both positions enable her to work from home, offering at least some flexibility. Jane shared that her first full-time internship experience during university left a lasting impression, sparking her strong aversion to careers and work. She elaborated on the oppressive work culture she encountered, stating, "My initial 9-to-5 internship experience was so abysmal that it made me deeply opposed to my career and work. The older management team clearly expected employees to prioritize work above all else. This phenomenon is directly linked to the capitalist system's underlying philosophy, the relentless pursuit of profit based on the exploitation of labor. In this economic structure, workers do not own the means of production and are required to sell their labor to make a living. Capitalist employers buy this labor not to fairly compensate for effort, but to extract surplus value, representing the difference between the value created by employees and the wages they receive. To maximize this surplus value, the capitalists aim to increase both the intensity and duration of work. In South Korea and increasingly globally, the concept of an infinite workday has emerged as a direct consequence of capitalism's exploitative dynamics. Initially, digital technology was envisioned to liberate individuals from mundane tasks and drudgery. However, under the capitalist system, these innovations have instead become instruments of perpetual surveillance and control. Workers, faced with email correspondence past midnight, incessant messaging, and mandatory social events that blur the line between work and personal life, are compelled to extend their working hours beyond reasonable expectations, all in the pursuit of maximizing profit. Under the capitalist economic system, there exists no inherent incentive for employers to decrease working hours, as their primary motivation lies in maximizing profit. In fact, the competitive nature of the system compels companies to constantly intensify their exploitation of labor to stay ahead. Even when technological advancements such as the implementation of AI result in a reduction in the necessary labor time by 3, capital does not pass on this efficiency gain in the form of shorter working hours. Instead, it reinvests in expansion or further intensifies the demands placed upon the remaining workers. Lee's feelings of guilt and need to hide her work from home hours are not solely due to a lack of discipline, but instead reflect the pervasive influence of capitalist culture. In this cultural landscape, overwork is glorified, while human needs like sleep, recovery, and relationships, the very foundations of a fulfilling life, are compromised. A transformation to a society that collectively controls production, prioritizing use value over exchange value, holds the promise of liberating workers from the burden of infinite workdays and fostering an environment where individuals are free to prioritize dignity, health, and even a simple dinner at 6 p.m. Capitalism, as the prevailing socioeconomic system, shapes the labor market and workplace dynamics. Within this system, the relentless pursuit of profit drives employers to optimize worker productivity and minimize costs, often resulting in extended working hours, elevated stress levels, burnout, and an imbalanced work-life balance. In addition to shaping labor market dynamics, capitalism perpetuates societal structures and norms that elevate overwork and productivity over human needs and well-being. This cultural emphasis on maximizing profit can further exacerbate feelings of anxiety and burnout among workers, as the relentless pursuit of economic gains takes precedence over individual welfare and work-life balance. The situation is indeed a complex and disheartening one. On one hand, North Korea presents itself as a socialist state, though in reality it resembles a totalitarian regime akin to a monarchy. The Kim family wields absolute power within the country, resembling the absolute monarchs of the past. North Korea's economy remains severely impoverished, with only certain segments in the capital city Pyongyang and military personnel receiving adequate food supplies. On the other hand, even in South Korea, capitalism's impact has led to an exploitative work culture, resulting in workers experiencing burnout and anxiety. Both societies are fraught with challenges and hardships. North Korea's Juche ideology deviates significantly from the principles of Marxism. In practice, the state exerts stringent control over economic activities, and workers do not authentically exercise democratic control over production. This leads to a hierarchical structure where the ruling elite assumes a managerial role, controlling national resources rather than empowering workers. While there are additional reasons behind North Korea's status as a dystopia, This video primarily focuses on the Korean Peninsula's dystopian nature, and North Korea's totalitarian regime contributes significantly to this classification. South Korea has indeed overcome the era of dictatorship, having embraced democracy since the late 1980s. However, despite these political advancements, its hyper-capitalist system persists, continuing to shape society. While there are narratives promoting the perception that America rescued South Korea and Park Chung-hee's leadership transformed the nation into a utopia, the reality is that the facade of capitalism's excellence remains an illusion, akin to the situation in Saudi Arabia. The Korean conflict can be traced back to the aftermath of World War II, when the legitimate People's Republic of Korea was dismantled by external imperialist powers, particularly the US and the Soviet Union. This led to the division of Korea into North and South Korea, resulting in the perpetuation of dystopian conditions in both regions due to divergent political systems. A solution lies in the possibility of a collective revolution in both North and South Korea to restore the People's Republic of Korea. However, whether this will come to fruition remains uncertain. Thanks for watching, and make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more interesting content in the upcoming video. Until next time, take care, peace.